The morning sun cast a golden glow over London as the city prepared for one of the most significant events in British history. Inside Kensington Palace, Prince William stood before his bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting his ceremonial uniform. The deep navy fabric was adorned with gleaming metals and golden braiding that caught the early light streaming through the tall windows. Kate emerged from her dressing room, a vision of elegance in her flowing ivory gown. The dress had been specially designed for this momentous occasion, featuring delicate embroidery that told the story of the four nations of the United Kingdom. Tiny roses for England, thistles for Scotland, daffodils for Wales, and shamrocks for Northern Ireland were woven into the fabric with silver thread that sparkled as she moved. "You look absolutely stunning," William said softly, reaching for her hand. His voice carried a mixture of pride and nervous excitement. Today wasn't just about ceremony and tradition. It was about their family stepping into a new chapter of their lives together. In the children's wing of the palace, Prince George was having his own preparations. The young prince, now tall for his age, wore a miniature version of his father's uniform. His governess helped him with the final touches, ensuring every button was perfectly aligned. George had been practicing his walk and bow for weeks, understanding the importance of today's events even at his young age. Princess Charlotte twirled in her beautiful pale pink dress, the skirt spinning around her like a flower in bloom. The dress featured the same symbolic embroidery as her mother's gown, but in a softer, more youthful design. Her long hair had been styled in an elegant updo, with small pearl pins that had belonged to her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Little Prince Louis, the youngest of the three, was dressed in a smart sailor suit that made him look like a proper little gentleman. His nanny had to keep reminding him not to touch his perfectly styled hair, as the curious boy was fascinated by how different he looked in his formal attire. The family gathered in the main drawing room, where photographers captured their final moments before leaving for Westminster Abbey. The children stood close to their parents, sensing the magnitude of the day. William placed his hands on George's shoulders while Kate smoothed Charlotte's dress one last time. "Remember what we talked about?" Kate whispered to the children. "Today is very special for Grandpapa, and we want to make him proud." The children nodded solemnly, their young faces serious with understanding. Outside the palace, the sounds of preparation grew louder. The clip-clop of horses' hooves echoed on the cobblestones as the ceremonial carriages were brought around. The Diamond Jubilee Stagecoach, a magnificent vehicle of glass and gold, waited to transport the family to the Abbey. Its modern design allowed spectators to see the royal occupants clearly, while still maintaining the grandeur expected of such an occasion. Palace staff moved with practiced efficiency, checking every detail one final time. The red carpet was perfectly aligned, the ceremonial guard stood at attention, and security personnel maintained their vigilant watch. Everything had to be perfect for this historic moment. William took a deep breath as he heard the gentle knock on the door, their signal that it was time to leave. He looked at his family, his heart swelling with love and pride. Kate squeezed his hand reassuringly, her calm presence grounding him as always. The children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, standing a little straighter and speaking in hushed tones. George, as the eldest, took his responsibility seriously, while Charlotte and Louis looked to their big brother for guidance. As they prepared to step outside and into history, William couldn't help but think of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, who had passed the previous year. She would have been so proud to see her great-grandchildren participating in this ancient ceremony, carrying forward traditions that stretched back over 1,000 years. The family moved toward the door, their footsteps muffled by the thick palace carpets. Today would mark not just the coronation of King Charles III, but also a new era for the Wales family and their role in the monarchy. As they approached the threshold that would take them from the private sanctuary of their home to the public stage of British history, each member of the family carried with them the weight of duty, the joy of celebration, and the unbreakable bonds of love that would sustain them through this momentous day. The palace doors opened with ceremonial precision, revealing the magnificent sight that awaited the Wales family. The Diamond Jubilee Stagecoach stood gleaming in the morning sunlight, its gold leaf catching every ray and creating an almost magical glow. The coach's modern glass panels had been polished to perfection, allowing the thousands of well-wishers who lined the streets to catch glimpses of the royal family during their journey. 4 magnificent Windsor grey horses stood in perfect formation, their coats brushed to a lustrous shine. These weren't just any horses. They were specially trained for royal occasions, accustomed to the crowds, the music, and the pomp and circumstance that surrounded such events. Their harnesses gleamed with brass fittings and colorful plumes adorned their bridles. William stepped out first, his tall frame cutting an impressive figure in his ceremonial uniform. The morning breeze caught the edges of his military cape, and for a moment he looked every inch the future king he was destined to become. He turned to offer his hand to Kate, who emerged with the grace and poise that had made her beloved by the British people. The children followed, their eyes wide with wonder at the spectacle before them. Prince George maintained his composure, though his excitement was evident in the way his eyes darted from the horses to the ornate carriage and back again. Princess Charlotte couldn't contain a small gasp of delight when she saw how the morning light made everything sparkle, like something from a fairy tale. Prince Louis, true to his energetic nature, had to be gently reminded by his mother not to run ahead. The young prince was fascinated by the horses, wanting to get closer to pet their soft noses. Kate knelt down to his level, explaining in simple terms why they needed to wait and be patient. The coachman, dressed in his finest royal livery, tipped his hat respectfully as the family approached. His uniform was a masterpiece of traditional British craftsmanship, with gold braiding and brass buttons that had been polished until they gleamed like mirrors. Behind him, 2 footmen in matching attire stood ready to assist the family into the carriage. As they climbed into the coach, the children's excitement became more apparent. The interior was even more magnificent than the outside, with plush velvet seating in deep royal blue and gold trim that seemed to glow in the filtered sunlight. Small details caught their attention: the crystal holders for flowers, the silk window shades with their golden tassels, and the softly cushioned seats that seemed fit for royalty. William and Kate exchanged glances, both remembering their own wedding day when they had traveled through London streets to the cheers of millions. But today felt different, more solemn, more weighted with history. They were no longer just the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, embarking on their new life together. They were the Prince and Princess of Wales with all the responsibilities and expectations that title carried. The coachman called out a traditional command, and the horses began their measured walk down the palace drive. The sound of their hooves on the gravel created a rhythmic beat that seemed to echo the pulse of excitement running through the city. Palace guards in their distinctive red uniforms and towering bearskin hats stood at attention as the carriage passed, their presence a reminder of the security and tradition that surrounded the royal family. As they emerged from the palace grounds onto the public streets, the real spectacle began. Thousands upon thousands of people lined the route, many having camped out overnight to secure the best viewing spots. British flags fluttered from windows, lampposts, and in the hands of enthusiastic spectators. The crowd's cheers rose to a crescendo as they caught their first glimpse of the family inside the glass coach. Charlotte pressed her face to the window, waving enthusiastically at the crowd. Her innocent joy brought smiles to the faces of onlookers, many of whom waved back with equal enthusiasm. George, following his father's example, offered more reserved but dignified waves, while Louis seemed mesmerized by the sheer number of people who had come to see them. Kate pointed out interesting sights along the route to keep the children engaged. Street performers in colorful costumes, elaborate decorations hanging from historic buildings, and the sea of people wearing red, white, and blue created a festive atmosphere that was impossible to ignore. The children's wonder at seeing their city transformed for this special day was infectious, reminding William and Kate of the magic that still surrounded the monarchy, despite all its modern challenges. The journey through London's historic streets was like traveling through living history. They passed landmarks that had witnessed centuries of royal celebrations, from Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee to the Silver Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. Each street corner held memories. Each building had stories to tell, and today they were adding their own chapter to this ongoing tale of British royalty. The Diamond Jubilee State Coach rolled smoothly through the heart of London, its route carefully planned to showcase the most historic and beautiful parts of the capital. The clip-clop of the horses' hooves created a steady rhythm that seemed to match the beating hearts of the thousands of spectators lining the streets. Each turn revealed new crowds, new decorations, and new expressions of joy and celebration. As they traveled down the Mall, the famous tree-lined avenue leading to Buckingham Palace, the family could see the incredible effort that had gone into preparing for this day. Enormous Union Jack flags hung from every lamppost, creating a canopy of red, white, and blue that stretched as far as the eye could see. The trees themselves had been decorated with golden ribbons that fluttered in the gentle morning breeze. Prince Louis had discovered that if he pressed his small hand against the glass window, the people outside would cheer even louder. His innocent delight in this interaction brought laughter from the crowd and worried glances from his parents, who gently redirected his attention to prevent any smudging of the pristine glass. Kate produced a small handkerchief from her purse, discreetly cleaning the window while engaging Louis in conversation about all the wonderful things they were seeing. Street vendors had set up along the permitted areas, selling commemorative items and traditional British treats. The smell of fish and chips, roasted nuts, and freshly baked scones wafted through the air, creating an atmosphere of celebration that felt more like a county fair than a formal royal procession. Children in the crowd wore paper crowns and waved miniature flags, their faces painted with Union Jack designs. The carriage passed through Admiralty Arch, the grand triumphal arch that marked the entrance to the Mall. Built to commemorate Queen Victoria, the arch served as a symbolic gateway between the everyday bustle of Trafalgar Square and the ceremonial heart of royal London. As they passed beneath its stone arches, William pointed out the architectural details to George, explaining how the building represented the long line of monarchs who had come before them. Princess Charlotte had become fascinated with the horses pulling their carriage. She asked her mother countless questions about their names, their ages, and whether they lived in special royal stables. Kate patiently answered each query, grateful for something to keep her daughter occupied during the long journey. The conversation also helped ease her own nerves about the approaching ceremony. The crowds grew denser as they approached Westminster, with people packed shoulder to shoulder behind the barriers. Police officers and security personnel maintained a watchful presence, but their serious demeanor couldn't dampen the festive atmosphere. Many spectators had brought periscopes and selfie sticks to get better views over the heads of those in front of them, creating a forest of extended arms and devices. International visitors were clearly visible among the British crowds, their different flags and national dress adding an international flavor to the celebration. Tour groups from around the world had planned their visit specifically for this historic event, and their excitement was palpable. Street musicians played everything from traditional British folk songs to contemporary pop music, creating a soundtrack for the royal procession. The carriage turned onto Whitehall, passing the famous government buildings where the business of running Britain took place daily. The contrast between the everyday work of government and the ancient ceremony they were traveling to attend highlighted the unique role the monarchy played in British life. Civil servants and government workers had gathered at their office windows, many taking photos and videos of the passing carriage. As they approached Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere began to change subtly. The crowds were no less enthusiastic, but there was a growing sense of solemnity and anticipation. The ancient abbey, with its Gothic spires reaching toward the sky, came into view like something from a medieval fairy tale. Its stone walls had witnessed the coronations of monarchs for nearly 1,000 years, and today it would witness another chapter in that incredible story. William felt his chest tighten with emotion as he saw the abbey ahead. This was where he and Kate had been married, where his parents had wed, and where his grandparents had celebrated their own union. It was a place of profound personal significance as well as national importance. He reached for Kate's hand, finding comfort in her steady presence. The children sensed the change in atmosphere, becoming quieter and more attentive as the abbey grew larger in their field of vision. Even young Louis seemed to understand that something very special was about to happen. The magnificent building ahead represented not just their grandfather's coronation, but their own future roles in the continuing story of the British royal family. Westminster Abbey loomed majestically before them, its ancient stone walls bathed in golden morning light. The Gothic towers and flying buttresses created dramatic shadows that spoke of centuries of history, while the modern security arrangements and television equipment reminded everyone that this ancient, Ceremony was being shared with a global audience of billions. The area around the abbey had been transformed into a sea of pageantry. Red carpet stretched from the street to the great west door, lined with perfectly arranged flower displays featuring white roses, delphiniums, and lavender, flowers chosen to represent the unity of the United Kingdom. The scent of the blooms mixed with the crisp morning air created an almost ethereal atmosphere. Military bands positioned at strategic points around the abbey grounds played stirring marches that echoed off the ancient walls. The musicians, dressed in their finest ceremonial uniforms, had been rehearsing for months to ensure every note was perfect for this historic occasion. The music seemed to lift the spirits of everyone present, from the distinguished guests already inside the abbey to the crowd still cheering from behind the barriers. The Diamond Jubilee stagecoach began to slow as it approached the final stretch of the journey. Through the windows, the family could see rows upon rows of international dignitaries, heads of state, and members of the nobility making their way into the abbey. Women in elaborate hats and flowing gowns walked arm in arm with men in military dress uniforms or formal morning coats, creating a parade of elegance that rivaled any fashion show. Prince George straightened his shoulders as he recognized some of the faces he had met at previous royal gatherings. His royal training was evident in the way he composed himself, understanding that from this moment forward, every gesture would be watched and remembered. His parents had spent considerable time preparing him for this day, explaining the importance of the ceremony while ensuring he understood his role as both a participant and a representative of the future of the monarchy. Princess Charlotte's eyes were wide with wonder as she spotted other children among the arriving guests. Many were the sons and daughters of foreign royals, dressed in their own national ceremonial attire. The sight of children from around the world gathering for her grandfather's coronation made the international significance of the event real to her in a way that adult explanations could not. The carriage came to a gentle stop at the designated arrival point, where a red carpet stretched like a royal river toward the abbey's entrance. Footmen in pristine uniforms immediately stepped forward to open the carriage doors, their movements practiced and precise. The moment had arrived for the Wales family to step out and take their place in this historic ceremony. William emerged first, his tall frame commanding immediate attention from the gathered photographers and television cameras. The morning light caught the gold braiding on his uniform, and for a moment the clicking of camera shutters created a sound like gentle rain. He turned to assist Kate, who stepped down with the grace and confidence that had made her one of the most photographed women in the world. Kate's gown flowed beautifully as she descended from the carriage, the intricate embroidery catching the light and cameras of the waiting media. Her composure was remarkable, showing no signs of the butterflies that surely must have been fluttering in her stomach. The small tiara she wore, a loan from the royal collection, sparkled like captured starlight against her carefully styled hair. The children followed, with George maintaining his dignified demeanor while helping his younger siblings navigate the step down from the carriage. Charlotte held her dress carefully to avoid tripping, while Louis looked around with the uninhibited curiosity that had endeared him to the public during previous royal appearances. The family paused for a moment at the foot of the red carpet, allowing the official photographers to capture this historic moment. Behind them, the Diamond Jubilee stagecoach gleamed in the sunlight, while ahead of them, Westminster Abbey beckoned with its promise of ancient ceremony and profound significance. Palace officials and church dignitaries approached to guide them through the final preparations before entering the abbey. Final adjustments were made to ensure everyone looked perfect. A straightening of metals here, a smoothing of fabric there, a gentle reminder to the children about their behavior inside the sacred space. The sounds of the organ could be heard drifting from within the abbey, where the invited congregation was already seated and waiting. The music spoke of tradition, solemnity, and celebration all at once, setting the tone for what was about to unfold inside those ancient walls. The great west door of Westminster Abbey stood open before them, revealing glimpses of the magnificent interior that awaited. Ancient stone columns soared toward the vaulted ceiling, while stained glass windows painted rainbow patterns across the assembled congregation. The abbey had been prepared with meticulous care for this momentous occasion, with thousands of flowers arranged throughout the sacred space and golden tapestries hung from the medieval walls. Palace protocol officers made final checks of the family's appearance, ensuring that every detail was perfect for their entrance into the abbey. Kate's gown was given one last adjustment, the children's posture was checked, and William's medals were straightened. These weren't just ceremonial touches, they were essential preparations for a moment that would be recorded for history and watched by people around the world. The sound of the abbey organ grew stronger as they approached the entrance, the majestic music seeming to welcome them into the sacred space. The organist was playing compositions that had been specifically chosen for their historical significance and their ability to create an atmosphere of both celebration and reverence. Each note echoed through the ancient stones, creating harmonies that seemed to connect this modern ceremony with centuries of royal tradition. Prince George took a deep breath as they reached the threshold of the abbey. His parents had prepared him well for this moment, explaining that he would need to walk with dignity and composure through the long nave to their designated seats near the altar. The young prince understood the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As third in line to the throne, his behavior today would be remembered as part of royal history. Princess Charlotte reached for her mother's hand as they prepared to enter the abbey. The little princess had been excited about her beautiful dress and the pageantry of the day, but now the solemnity of the ancient building seemed to affect her. Kate squeezed her daughter's hand reassuringly, whispering gentle words of encouragement that only Charlotte could hear. Prince Louis, the youngest of the three, looked up at the towering entrance with wide eyes. His parents had simplified their explanations of the day's events for him, focusing on the importance of being quiet and respectful in the special church where Grandpapa would become king. The little prince nodded seriously, understanding that today was different from their usual family outings. The family stepped across the threshold into Westminster Abbey, immediately enveloped by the cool, sacred atmosphere of the ancient building. The scent of centuries-old stone mixed with fresh flowers created an aroma that spoke of both history and celebration. Their footsteps on the stone floor joined the soft murmur of conversation from the already seated congregation. The nave of the abbey stretched out before them like a cathedral highway leading to the altar, where King Charles III would soon be crowned. On either side, wooden pews were filled with representatives from around the world, kings and queens, presidents and prime ministers, religious leaders and cultural figures. The sight was both overwhelming and inspiring, representing the global significance of this ancient ceremony. Television cameras, discreetly positioned throughout the abbey, captured every moment of their entrance. The broadcast would reach an estimated 2 billion viewers worldwide, making this one of the most watched events in television history. Yet despite the modern technology recording every step, the ceremony itself remained rooted in traditions that stretched back over 1,000 years. The children walked between their parents, their training and preparation evident in their dignified bearing. George led the way with confident steps, while Charlotte maintained perfect posture despite her young age. Louis, though the youngest, seemed to sense the importance of the moment and walked with unusual solemnity for a child his age. As they processed down the nave, members of the congregation turned to watch their passage. Many smiled warmly at the sight of the three children participating in this historic ceremony, understanding that they were witnessing not just a coronation, but the preparation of future generations of royals. The children represented the continuity of the monarchy, the promise that these ancient traditions would continue into the future. The family could see their designated seats near the front of the abbey, positioned to give them a clear view of the coronation ceremony, while allowing the cameras to capture their reactions to this historic moment. Royal household staff stood discreetly nearby, ready to assist if needed, but remaining invisible to the television audience. With each step toward their seats, the Wales family moved deeper into history, becoming part of a ceremony that connected them to every monarch who had been crowned in this sacred space since William the Conqueror. Today was not just about King Charles III ascending to the throne, but about the entire royal family taking their place in the continuing story of the British crown. The Wales family reached their designated seats in the front section of Westminster Abbey, their journey from Kensington Palace now complete. The ancient pews, crafted from English oak centuries ago, had been carefully prepared with velvet cushions in royal blue, providing both comfort and dignity for the long ceremony ahead. Each seat had been precisely positioned to ensure perfect views of the altar, where King Charles III would soon be crowned. Prince George settled into his seat with the composure expected of a future king, his young face serious as he took in the magnificent surroundings. The Abbey's soaring Gothic arches stretched high above them, creating a sense of reaching toward heaven that seemed appropriate for such a sacred ceremony. Stained glass windows filtered colored light across the congregation, painting everyone in jeweled tones of blue, red, and gold. Princess Charlotte sat between her parents, her beautiful dress arranged carefully around her. She gazed in wonder at the elaborate flower arrangements that decorated every corner of the abbey. White roses, sweet peas, and baby's breath created cascading displays that transformed the ancient space into something from a fairy tale. The little princess whispered quietly to her mother, asking about the meaning of the various symbols she could see carved into the stone pillars. Prince Louis, despite his young age, seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. He sat quietly beside his father, occasionally looking around at the impressive gathering of world leaders and dignitaries who filled every seat in the abbey. The young prince had never seen so many important people gathered in one place, and his wide eyes reflected his amazement at the scale of the event. The organ music swelled as the final guests took their places, creating an atmosphere of mounting anticipation. The composer had chosen pieces that honored British musical tradition while celebrating the international nature of the gathering. Each note seemed to resonate through the stone walls, connecting this modern ceremony with centuries of royal coronations that had taken place in this very location. Kate adjusted her position slightly, ensuring that her elaborate gown fell perfectly around her chair. The intricate embroidery caught the light from the Abbey's chandeliers, each thread representing the skilled craftsmanship of British artisans who had worked for months to create her ceremonial attire. Her small tiara, borrowed from the royal collection, sparkled like captured starlight against her carefully styled hair. William looked around the Abbey, recognizing faces from throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. Prime ministers, presidents, and royal family members from across Europe and around the world had gathered to witness this historic moment. The sight reminded him of the global significance of the British monarchy and the responsibilities that came with their position in the royal family. The children had been prepared for the length of the ceremony, with special activities planned to keep them engaged during the longer portions of the service. Small prayer books with pictures and simplified explanations had been provided, along with discreet snacks and water to ensure their comfort throughout the morning. Palace staff had thought of every detail to ensure the young royals could participate meaningfully in this historic event. As the final preparations were completed inside the Abbey, the family could sense the building excitement around them. Television cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the ceremony to billions of viewers around the world. Yet despite the modern technology and global audience, the essence of the ceremony remained, unchanged from coronation centuries past. The magnificent altar area had been prepared with golden vessels and ancient regalia that would play crucial roles in the coronation ceremony. The crown jewels glittered under the Abbey's lights, each piece representing centuries of royal history and the continuity of the British crown. The St. Edward's crown, which would soon rest upon King Charles III's head, had crowned monarchs since the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. The Wales family sat together, united in their support for King Charles III and their commitment to the monarchy's future. Their presence at the coronation represented not just their family bond, but the continuation of royal traditions into the next generation. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis would one day tell their own children about this historic day when they witnessed their great-grandfather become king. As the ceremony was about to begin, Westminster Abbey fell into expectant silence. 2,000 guests, representing every corner of the globe and every walk of life, prepared to witness an event that connected them to over a millennium of British history. The Wales family, having completed their grand arrival, now settled in to observe a ceremony that would mark not just the crowning of a new king, but the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the British royal family.